the Gambler's Ruin Project where the odds get cracked. MLS week ending the 1st of June 2025 predictions.
Welcome back to the Gambler's Ruin Project, powered by SmartBet AI, where the numbers don't lie, but the weather might. This week's theme? Blame Canada. Two MLS clashes, both hosted on northern soil, and both dripping with unpredictability and actual precipitation.
Toronto versus Philadelphia under storm clouds, and Vancouver versus Minnesota in the calm before the statistical storm.
Two very different forecasts. One rain-soaked chess match, the other a numbers tug-of-war between inconsistent squads.
Gambling equals risk. These are data-driven predictions, not betting advice. 2% bankroll rule reminder. Even in Canada, rain isn't the only thing that can ruin your bankroll.
Alright, our first matchup of the week takes us to stormy Southern Ontario, where Toronto FC hosts the Philadelphia Union at BMO Field. And let me just say, the weather is bringing all the drama before kickoff even arrives.
Picture this, 51 degrees, winds gusting at 28 miles per hour, and a 71% chance of rain. You're not watching soccer, you're braving a maritime expedition with cleats.
Honestly, this isn't just bad weather, it's tactical interference. High winds mess with long passes, rain slicks up the turf, and every back pass becomes a potential blooper reel.
So for anyone hoping for a crisp possession-based masterclass, lower your expectations. It's going to be ugly, which might actually suit both sides.
Toronto are without Richie Laria. He's only featured twice this season, but when he plays, he's one of their few vertical outlets. Muscle issue, no timeline.
And Philly? Just Marcus Anderson missing. Depth striker, ankle tweak. Not a game changer, but it does thin out their plan B up top.
So Philly's got the cleaner bill of health, plus more squad consistency. And trust me, that matters when Mother Nature is actively trying to nutmeg you.
Let's go macro with the ELO ratings. Philly clocks in at 1,524.84, Toronto at 1,440.04. That's an 85-point gap. For context, that's like putting an electric scooter up against a city bus in a headwind.
And guess who's riding the scooter? Sorry, Toronto fans.
Expected goals from the Poisson model tell us this is not a high-scoring setup. Toronto, 1.11, Philly, 1.17.
Which basically means nobody's likely to run away with it. The models are projecting narrow margins, or as Dominic would call it, trench warfare.
Yeah, and Monte Carlo agrees. Simulated this game 10,000 times. Top score lines, 1-1, 13.38%, 0-1 Philly, 12.01%, 1-0 Toronto, 11.13%. So, tiny wins, possibly a draw, definitely a low volatility match, until the wind decides otherwise.
The model suite mostly leans Philly Random Forest, away win, XG Boost, away win, MLP Neural Net, yep, away win, but the stacked ensemble, our smartest ensemble model, says draw.
So we've got a 3-1 split. The majority says Philly snatches it, but the ensemble's sitting on the fence.
And when the models split, that's your red flag, not to bet bigger, but to bet smaller. High uncertainty plus weather chaos equals volatility.
This game screams set-piece goals. The weather kills open play rhythm, and every corner, free kick, or deflected cross becomes a threat.
Exactly. You're not breaking down backlines with tiki-taka in a thunderstorm. This is hope it bounces your way football. I'm seeing a scrappy 1-1 or a late luck 0-1 Philly steal.
And Toronto's at home, but they've only won once in their last 5. Home field won't save you from slippery turf and a sharper midfield.
If you're hunting value plays this week, here's what we've got from the models. Both teams to score marginal. Not because it'll be open, but because errors will happen. Under 2.5 goals. Supported by Poisson, weather and market movement. Draw no bet Philadelphia. You're leaning with the model majority, but hedging for volatility. Correct score value 1-1 or 0-1.
And remember, this isn't a game for bravado. This is a test of discipline. Toronto can sneak it, but the probability margin is razor thin.
And if Philly does pull it off, blame Canada. Or more specifically, blame that wind tunnel they call BMO Field. Alright, before we drown in more XG charts and wind speed conversions, let me tell you a story. One that perfectly sums up Toronto FC's chaotic charm.
Oh no, this sounds like one of those MLS's back, but barely holding it together tales.
It is. Flashback to 2007, Toronto FC's inaugural season. They're the new kids in the league, trying to prove themselves. They've got the home crowd, they've got the energy, they've even got Danny Dichio up top.
Dichio, cult hero, scored their first ever goal, didn't he?
Exactly. But here's the kicker, literally. For one of their early away games in New England, TFC shows up to the stadium and realizes they forgot their away kits. Like entirely. No white shirts, no backups, nothing.
Wait, so what? They just played shirts versus skins?
Almost. The Revs had to lend them their own training kits so the match could go ahead. Toronto decked out in blue and white gear that looked suspiciously like the home team, and they lost.
So let me get this straight. Toronto FC in their debut year shows up, borrows kits from the opponent, then loses. That's not just a loss, that's a personality origin story.
Exactly. That was peak early MLS chaos. But Toronto fans, they still laugh about it. That moment, in all its amateur hour glory, made the eventual highs, like the 2017 treble, taste even sweeter.
Moral of the story, always pack a backup kit. And maybe, don't let interns handle logistics.
Especially in Canada. You never know when the weather or your wardrobe's going to betray you.
Alright, next stop on the Blame Canada tour. We head west to BC Place where Vancouver hosts Minnesota United in what should be a clean, fast-passing affair. Emphasis on should.
Yeah, we go from weather chaos in Toronto to climate perfection in Vancouver. 65 degrees, inside the dome, and turf that plays like a runway.
No wind, no rain, no excuses. This is the kind of setup where systems shine or completely unravel.
And given how these teams operate, unraveling is definitely on the table.
For the Caps, the big absentee is Ryan Gould, their midfield metronome, still out with a knee issue, and it shows. He hasn't played since early May.
Without Gould, Vancouver loses their tempo and their ability to link midfield to attack. It's like trying to DJ a party with no AUX chord.
And Minnesota? Kip Keller's out. Thigh injury. Less impactful, but he's still part of their defensive rotation.
Translation, Vancouver loses their engine room. Minnesota loses a spare tyre. Not equal.
Let's bring the numbers in. ELO ratings give Vancouver a slight edge. Whitecaps, 1533.33. Minnesota, 1517.97.
Poisson says it'll be close expected goals. Vancouver, 1.30. Minnesota, 1.14. So not a blowout, but Vancouver should be slightly more dangerous, at least on paper.
And our Monte Carlo simulation agrees. Out of 10,000 runs, 1-0 Vancouver shows up 13.01%. 1-1 draw 11.62%, 0-1 Minnesota 9.69%. Pretty even, but notice, no wild scorelines. The data says low risk, low reward.
Now, here's where it gets spicy. The model suite is split down the seams. Random Forest and Light GBM call an away win. XG Boost and MLP Neural Net like Vancouver. Stacked Ensemble leans Minnesota.
That's rare. The models are usually within shouting distance. This time they're filing separate tax returns.
So what do we make of that? Model tug of war, ELO says slight home edge, and the forecast's a dream.
This is one of those data divergence games. Poisson and ELO give Vancouver the nod, but the ensemble model, which combines all our classifiers, it leans Minnesota. That's not just noise, that's a signal of volatility.
And here's why I think that matters. Minnesota thrives on disorder. They don't need to dominate. They need one moment to break through, especially against a Gouldless midfield that's struggling to control tempo.
Exactly. Vancouver may look good early, but without their central playmaker, they fade. The models are picking up on that, and it's reflected in that 0-1 scoreline appearing in nearly 10% of simulations.
So it's Vancouver with the surface-level edge, Minnesota with the statistical undercurrent. Classic don't trust the table matchup.
Here's what we're leaning on for this one. BTTS, no. Both attacks are inconsistent, and the expected goals are modest. Under 2.5 goals, everything points to a low-event game, double chance Minnesota or draw. You're siding with the ensemble model and protecting against a Vancouver stumble. Value shot? Correct score 0-1 Minnesota. High variance, but lines up with model clustering.
And let me just say this. If you're the kind of bettor that hates chaos, this isn't your match. The volatility isn't in the scoreline. It's in the flow. Vancouver might look like the better side until they suddenly aren't.
And when that happens, you guessed it, blame Canada. So after 20,000 simulations, 4 models, 2 weather systems, and a very damp injury report, what's the takeaway from tonight's MLS doubleheader?
Simple, blame Canada.
Not for everything, but definitely for making 2 home games look like away trips in disguise.
both Toronto and Vancouver playing at home, and yet both come out as underdogs in the eyes of the AI. That's not just a bad coincidence, that's a theme.
Canada gives us a lot of good things: mousse, maple syrup, tragically hip, poutine. But when it comes to soccer, they give us statistical migraines.
And slippery turf, don't forget that.
Let's recap this double feature. In Toronto, we get swirling wind, sheets of rain, and a team whose best attacking option is questionable due to injury.
Meanwhile, in Vancouver, we've got pristine turf, perfect conditions, and a midfield trying to run its engine with no spark plug, thanks to Ryan Gauld being out.
And here's the kicker. Both matches have AI models fighting over the result like it's an overcooked steak. This wasn't clean-cut analysis. These were weather-fueled, squad-weakened, model-conflicted messes.
This is why we always say home advantage is a myth without midfield stability. Just because you're at home doesn't mean you're in control, especially not in May, especially not in Canada.
And look, we're not being harsh, we're being realists. These are the matches where fans scream, "We should have won that!" And the models whisper back, "No, you shouldn't have."
And it's not just about who's better on paper. It's about game states, field conditions, absences in critical zones, like defensive midfield and central playmaking, and chaos variables you can't see in the standings.
Chaos variables, the Canadian specialty.
Tonight proved that in North America's northernmost markets, home field isn't sacred ground. It's just more real estate for misfires, slips, and low-scoring standoffs.
And when in doubt, don't yell at the ref, don't blame the XG.
Blame Canada. Everything has gone wrong ever since Canada has come along. All right, team, let's tie a bow on this rainy, soggy, simulation-packed episode. What have we learned?
We learned that this week is less about finding winners and more about avoiding landmines.
Exactly. The models didn't give us golden locks. They gave us warning signs. And those are just as valuable if you know how to read them.
Let's start with the weather. In Toronto, wind, rain, misery. That's not just uncomfortable, it's unpredictable.
Rain games turn every pass into a coin flip. Slip-ups become goal chances. And defensive structure goes right out the window.
Then over in Vancouver, perfect weather, but no midfield control without Gauld. So instead of chaos from above, it's chaos from within.
Now add in what the models told us. Stacked ensemble splits in both matches. That's like your GPS glitching out right before a freeway merge. Proceed with caution.
When we see splits like this, Poisson saying one thing, MLP and XG Boost saying another, and the ensemble shrugging, that's your volatility alert. These aren't games to go all in on.
It's the classic betting paradox. The less certain you are, the more careful you need to be. And most people do the exact opposite.
Which brings us to the golden rule of the week. This isn't about chasing miracles, it's about playing the margins.
Small edges, conservative bets. You're not trying to hit a 9-leg parlay. You're trying to survive May soccer in Canada with your bankroll intact.
If the models give you a 1.11 versus 1.17 XG split, that's not a green light, that's a yellow one. Yield. Take the draw, no bet. Look for a total under. Hedge your risk.
So here's the mindset going into this match week. Trust the models, but only when they trust each other. Respect the weather, especially when it doesn't respect the game. And most of all, don't go broke chasing gut feelings in the fog.
This week, the wins won't come from bold picks. They'll come from disciplined restraint.
Because as the AI reminds us every week, the edge isn't in the flashiest pick. It's in the right one, placed at the right size.
So take your 2%, pick your spots, and when all else fails, just remember, blame Canada. We'll see you next week. Same time, same simulations, fewer soggy pitch conditions. Hopefully. This has been the Gambler's Ruin Project. See you next time. And definitely not the Canadian spring forecast. Until then, stay smart, bet small. And remember, when in doubt, trust the data, not your gut. Blame Canada. Seriously, folks, it's been a fun one. We'll be back next week with clearer skies, tighter models, and hopefully fewer puddles in midfield. And most importantly, if the pitch turns into a slip and slide, the XG goes out the window and your bankroll takes a hit. Avoid the all-or-nothing bets. No long-shot parlays this week. No 5-leg goal-scorer combos. You're threading a needle in a snowstorm. Track form trends. Gould's absence, Larrier's injury, the effect of wind on attacking width. These details matter more than what the sportsbook odds imply. Bet small. Stick to the 2% rule. Even if you feel good about a line, remember, Variance doesn't care how confident you are.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Gambler's Ruin Project. Remember, our content is for informational purposes only, and all predictions are AI generated. Gambling can be addictive, so please bet responsibly. If you or someone you know needs help with gambling addiction, here are resources that can provide support. North America, contact the National Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-800-522-4700, available 24/7 for confidential help. UK, reach out to BeGambleAware at 08088020133 or visit begambleaware.org for information and support. Bet smart, bet safe, and as always, remember to keep things fun and balanced. We'll see you next week for more insights. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more AI-driven insights and pro betting tips each week. See you next time. Disclaimer, this content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The predictions and insights provided by the Gambler's Ruin Project, powered by SmartBet AI technology, are generated using statistical models and historical data. These predictions do not guarantee outcomes and should not be considered financial or betting advice. Gambling can be addictive. Please bet responsibly and only wager what you can afford to lose. If you or someone you know is struggling with gambling addiction, seek help from professional support services. Legal notice. This content does not constitute an offer to participate in gambling. The Gambler's Ruin Project does not operate as a bookmaker or betting service and does not encourage gambling. All users are responsible for complying with local laws and regulations regarding sports betting and gambling-related content in their respective jurisdictions. The Gambler's Ruin Project, where the odds get cracked.